Hello, everybody. Welcome to DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. My name is Brandon Adams. Our final show in New Orleans as we get ready to head back to Atlanta today. Big day of recruiting on the pages of DawgNation. We'll certainly look forward to covering all of that with you. But one final time here in the Crescent City for that on the Sugar Bowl and the night that was for the Georgia Bulldogs, and a night that I thought was just a ton of fun. I will say, for those of you watching on video, first and foremost, apologies for the hat today. Not exactly pristine physical condition right now after a very late night in New Orleans. I can say that for my on-site producer, BJ Swinney, and back in our Atlanta studios, the world-famous DawgNation.com, world headquarters studios, our buddy Michael Carvel burning the candle at both ends there as well to bring you Sugar Bowl coverage. I know many of you feel very much the same way. Well, the fourth quarter start last night at midnight Eastern time, so for a lot of us, it was kind of a bleary-eyed, sleepless night. But listen, a small price to pay for a show that the Georgia Bulldogs put on last night against the Baylor Bears, and quite a different feeling for Georgia leaving New Orleans this time around than it was a year ago. We're going to talk a lot about that on today's show. In fact, we're going to have a ton of interviews. I had a chance to, both on the field and in the locker room last night, catch up with a lot of Georgia players, and we'll hear from a lot of those guys on the program here today, including, first off, in just a moment, Georgia running back Deandre Swift, who has been such an emotional, vocal, spiritual leader for this Georgia team all season long. Even though he wasn't able to play a ton last night, he certainly fought to get on the field as much as he could. And he really set the tone, I thought, for what was a focused Georgia team. There had been so much talk about who wasn't here leading up to the Sugar Bowl last night, but Smart's mantra of we're going to focus on the guys who are here, admittedly, that can seem a little bit like empty rhetoric when it sort of feels like a deflection from some bad news. But when you see Georgia go out and play the way that it played last night, the idea of the guys who were here banding together, wanting to play for each other, that certainly seemed to be a real thing they believed in. And we'll hear Deandre Swift on those words here in just a moment, too. We'll also hear what I believe is going to be Matt Luke's first interview. I had a chance to talk to Luke last night for a brief moment on the field. He expressed his excitement about working with UGA. It was really interesting to see Luke come through the dog walk, and you can watch our Kroger Kickoff video special from before the Sugar Bowl last night. Luke comes in, navy blue suit, red tie. It was very, very fitting for a coach at Ole Miss to have a suit that color. You could easily imagine him wearing that for Ole Miss's own Rebel Walk or whatever it is they call that. So maybe still kind of getting the wardrobe up to, full UGA regalia, but nonetheless, in the traditional coaching gear, Luke seemed to be having a really good time last night around UGA. We'll get a chance to hear from him on that too. For me, there are couple really strong takeaways for what we saw last night that'll sort of be etched in my mind forever. And obviously, first and foremost on that list is going to be George Pickens. Throughout our show, you're going to hear a lot of Georgia players talk about what they saw from Pickens, how impressed they were for him. I thought it was just an unbelievable display. We knew that Pickens was this kind of player. And in fact, I think we would say that in a year in which the Georgia passing game at times has left a lot to be desired, and when the wide receiving core in particular has been called into question so much, even in the midst of that, Pickens had already had a really impressive freshman season. I think you could say that he's likely the best freshman receiver in America just based on the stats that he put before last night's game. But what he showed you last night, admittedly a lot of this coming in the first half, but what he showed you last night is that this is more than just a fun story for UGA fans. This is potentially, as we head towards 2020, and now we are in the calendar year of 2020, so it's not too early to start thinking about Georgia's upcoming season. But when you start sort of etching out in your mind what that's going to look like, Pickens as one of the top receivers in the country, that's not too big of a leap to get to. When you look at the way that he uses his size, when you look at the way that he's seemingly late in the year finding additional chemistry with Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm, and obviously we'll have to find out about Fromm's future here at a later date. But when you look at the way in which the Pickens is just kind of growing into a man in full, a wide receiver comfortable with all the things that you're being asked to do at the SEC level, in control of his emotions, which I know is the kind of thing that also kind of comes up from time to time. But the Pickens show last night was just awe-inspiring. And yes, I probably contributed to the George Pickens hype more than anybody probably has. And I think we're probably, at least a good year into that. We started talking about Pickens heavily, more than a year ago when he was still a recruit. And many of you have said I've kind of willed that to Georgia, pushed him towards Georgia, and it kind of came to fruition. I spoke that in the universe. And last night I could not have been more proud of all of that and all the fun we've had with Pickens over the last year than seeing him go out and do what he did. I was also lucky enough to kind of be there at the mouth of the tunnel at the field at the Superdome as he and Kirby Smart and some of the Georgia players were making their final exit from the Superdome turf, and obviously he was stopping and kind of doing the selfie poses with a lot of the fans and things like that. It was a fun thing to be able to see, and a really great night to cap off things for the University of Georgia, and kind of an interesting contrast in that while Pickens' performance was seemingly more about the future, there was also unmistakably last night a little bit of a call back to the past and like true, honest, genuine emotion from the guys who know they're playing their last game, for the guys who could possibly be playing their last game. And we'll talk a lot about that throughout today's program. And the real sense that the Georgia players themselves wanted to play for those guys. They wanted memories of a great Sugar Bowl win to be the last thing that various seniors thought about, or possible juniors who might be on their way to the league. And when you hear a lot of the interviews we're going to play in today's program, I think that notion is going to come shining through here. This was definitely a kind of a bonding exercise for Georgia throughout these bowl practices. We know how tough Georgia practices, and even without the chance to win a national championship, that's going to remain true. But there was definitely a bonding that seemingly went on, and definitely a reflection on the bond that had been put together over the course of these last 3 to 4 years. So if you're a Georgia fan who's enjoyed watching this team play this year, and if you're a Georgia fan who's appreciated the careers that some of these guys have put together over the course of the last several years, then I think you're going to really enjoy a lot of the interviews you hear in our program here today. One final time for us in downtown New Orleans before we're on our way back for a busy day of UGA recruiting coverage across all the DawgNation platforms. So let me remind you that this is DawgNation Daily. We're presented by Merriweather and Tharp. And let's face it, as the new year comes upon us here, many of you looking ahead to 2020, on the horizon you see the possibility of a divorce. And I know that's a terrible thing to have to think about, and I'm certainly sorry that you find yourself dealing with that situation. I can't necessarily make that better myself right now, but I can tell you this, that the process of going through that will be made better when you have an advocate on your side. That's one of the reasons why I am so enthusiastic about recommending my friends at Merriweather and Tharp, because they have been through this thousands of times before. This may be the first time you've gone through this, and it makes you scared, makes you confused, gives you a lot of questions. Well, Merriweather and Tharp can use their expertise gained from having been through this thousands of times to really be there on your side and do good work for you. You can be made whole again. Your family situation can be made better again. It may not seem like that now, but that can be true. Merriweather and Tharp is your source for Georgia divorce. You can find them online at theatlantadivorceteam.com. It's theatlantadivorceteam.com. All right, we've got a huge collection of interviews on the way. As I said before, the first that, at least that I'm aware of, with Georgia offensive line coach Matt Luke. We'll hear from him. A really fun retrospective on the career of Rodrigo Blankenship. I had a chance to talk to Hot Rod on the field last night, too. We'll do that later in the program. But I want to start here with Deandre Swift, and a couple things in particular that I spoke to Swift about that you're going to hear. Swift, who had been outspoken himself about what he wanted to see more of from the Georgia offense all season long, I asked him how nice it was to get a chance to see Georgia really be a lot more explosive in the game against the Baylor Bears. And I also asked him about the challenge of kind of pushing through and wanting to be on the field and really symbolize the level of commitment that Georgia wanted to show to this Sugar Bowl. Swift has some good things to say about that. And he also gets a little bit more specific than a lot of Georgia players were willing to do last night in terms of what his timeline is for making an NFL decision. So this is good stuff with Georgia running back Deandre Swift. Hope you enjoy that as part of DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp for our final time in New Orleans before we're on our way back to the state of Georgia. It's Swift now. It's more players to come. DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Deandre, you've been an outspoken leader for this team all season long, and you spent time getting this team ready for the Sugar Bowl. I know you were banged up, but how did it feel to see your team finish this 2020 season on a high note?
Just amazing. The way them young guys came in there, competed, really springboard them guys into the next season. So I'm just happy for the team, happy for everybody.
I know you weren't 100%, but how important was it for you, and why was it so important for you to kind of come out here and work hard and play as much as you could?
See, I didn't really think I was going to play, but I came out here and just the energy from everybody, I had to go out there and try and just do whatever they need me to do. But young guys came in there and really took care of business.
How proud are you of what you saw from George Pickens tonight?
Amazing. Young guy worked so hard every day, just high energy guy. He deserved what he got tonight.
When will you make your announcement about what your future plans are going to be?
Probably a couple of days. I'm not too sure yet, but I'm trying to enjoy my team, enjoy this win.
Well, if this is the last time we saw you in a Georgia uniform, UGA fans have certainly enjoyed watching you play. Congratulations on a great career up to this point in time, and best of luck in making the decision about your future.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. So good stuff there from Deandre Swift. I enjoyed my chance to speak to him, if for no other reason than because Swift has been so candid all year long, and you appreciate that about him. And it was also in keeping with the spirit of that candor going, the fact that he was willing to say, yeah, in a couple days I'm going to be able to kind of finish my process and all of this, and I hope you get a chance to hear what I said to him. If this is the last time that we saw Swift in a UGA uniform, for the courageous spirit in which he showed to go out there and try to give it his all last night, be on the field as much as he could, I think that all of us will have a very special place in UGA lore reserved for Swift. As a true freshman, as a part of a team that went to the college football playoff, his touchdown in the SEC championship game was really a big part of that storyline. As the leader of this Georgia offense over the course of the last couple of years, Swift has brought a lot to UGA. So if the last night was the last time we saw him in a Georgia uniform, then there is a lot to appreciate about this fantastic Georgia career. And I, for one, feel quite fortunate to get a chance to speak to him on the field about that last night. We got more interviews to come. By the way, this is not the last time we're going to hear from Deandre Swift on today's show either. Later on, I hope you can stick with us for the full show. I'm going to do a fun interview with Lawrence Cager. I wanted to speak to Cager because Cager tweeted during the game about George Pickens. Cager obviously not playing. He tweeted about Pickens. And so I wanted to talk to Cager about that. And as we're talking, Deandre Swift comes over and kind of interrupts the proceedings. Georgia offense coordinator James Coley as well. This is really funny. It's more of a video thing. You'll hear the voices, but if you're watching on video, you'll get a chance to see that better for yourself. Good stuff with Swift and Coley and Lawrence Cager later on in our program. For now, I want to talk about another junior, though, that was instrumental in last night's win, but also pivotal for Georgia the last few seasons. That's Richard LeCounte. And I hope that the TV broadcast did this justice. On LeCounte's second interception, which really kind of sealed the game, it was kind of funny on the interception. LeCounte, and I'm sure you saw this, didn't try to get any positive yardage in the interception return at all, just simply intercepted the ball as the play was live, sprinted horizontally across the field, across the Georgia bench, obviously ending the play and going out of bounds, and then running up to do the spike shoulder pad pose that we've seen him do so many times. It was the second time that night that LeCounte had been able to do that, and for someone like Richard, who has just brought so much energy to Georgia each and every time he's been on the field, it was such a perfect, I think, symbol of all of that. So I talked to LeCounte about that last night. I talked to him about his, process. He was not quite ready yet to shed too much light on what's going on with him in the NFL, but he was certainly very proud, very excited about the Sugar Bowl win, as he should be, given the fact that he was a big part of it. And this win itself could be quite a springboard for UGA. Really good stuff from Georgia safety, Richard LeCounte. Hope you enjoy that here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Richard, on that second interception, we saw you running over. You headed straight for the sidelines, get those spike shoulder pads on. What was that feeling like to cap off the game with a second turnover like that?
It was definitely good, man. Come over there and celebrate with my teammates, man. We worked so hard to get to this point that we're in right now. And, man, I just wanted to come over there, get those guys together. Let's celebrate this last win for the new year.
The theme that Kirby Smart had sort of expressed all week long was they wanted to focus on the guys that were here. How important was that for all of you to rally together and play hard, knowing you were in the same game you were in a year ago? How much was there talk about that, you guys playing for each other here today?
Oh, man, there was a lot of that going on, man. Those guys, that wasn't here, man, I wish them the best. I wish they could be here to feel this, excitement that we had going today. But the guys that was here, man, they put their best foot forward, man. Those guys came out there and gave everything that they had, and you can't ask nothing better than, that locker room in there.
You've obviously got a big decision potentially to make. What's your thought process going to be like on that? What's your timeline for making an announcement? What are these next few days going to be like for you?
Oh, yeah, man, I'm just chilling, man, trying to enjoy this with my teammates right now, man. I'm not too really getting into all that right now. I'm just, coming in here, thinking about those guys and going to celebrate with them right now. Thank you, brother.
Really good stuff there. Georgia safety Richard LeCounte, who I think has just been one of the real fun players to watch in a Georgia uniform for the last few years. And I don't know, you feel a little nostalgic sometimes at the end of a decade or the start of a new year, something like that. It is crazy to think that it was Christmas commitments video with Richard LeCounte. It seems like yesterday, right? And not just him, but Jake Fromm as well, and Malik Herring and J.J. Holloman. It just seems like that was yesterday, and here we are now talking about the end of LeCounte's junior season, and he's really done a lot of the things that he said he would do in that video. He has put together a winning streak against Florida, and he has, led Georgia to big heights. It's just amazing how fast time goes by, and obviously, selfishly, I hope this was not the last time that Richard LeCounte plays for Georgia, but I know that the NFL scouts are going to be very eager to get their looks at him and give him the once-over in terms of being a big-time future pro. So I know he's got a big decision to come, but boy, it'd be nice to think about LeCounte coming back for senior season. So we'll cross our fingers, hope for the best for that. But ultimately, even in the midst of that, we'll still wish him well, then certainly celebrate him for making the decision that's right for him, whatever it might be. But selfishly, it'd be nice to have that senior center, or I should say that senior safety patrolling the Georgia defense next season for sure on that. Let me get a few comments here before we get more videos. What we're going to hear from Rodrigo Blankenship in a moment. Really good chance to kind of keep him with the theme of celebrating great careers. We know for a fact that Blankenship's UGA career ended last night, and Rodrigo was good enough to spend a couple of minutes with us, and we kind of look back on a lot of the stuff with his career. We'll do that with Hot Rod from the field here coming up in just a couple of minutes. Let me do some Facebook comments before we get there. Here's part of DawgNation Daily presented by Merriweather and Tharp here today. Ron Willard says the Sugar Bowl game versus Baylor was one of the most exciting of the 2020 season. There's a lot to be excited about. And, yeah, Ron, I agree with you on that. I first of all thought it was a fun game last night for Georgia, even though it was kind of a late one, and a lot of us are overloading on coffee here today. I thought overall it was a really fun game and a really terrific, I think, commercial for Georgia for those willing to stay up late enough to watch it. I thought the Georgia advertisement was put on pretty good display last night. And sometimes these bowl wins can be kind of false positives. I'll admit that. They don't always suggest success in the next year. In fact, Texas, who won last year's Sugar Bowl, certainly didn't look like that team very much during the 2019 season. But it's better to win it than not. And momentum is sort of what you make of any situation. And so Georgia using this as kind of a positive vibe and that sort of do more mentality that I'm sure which will extend into this season there as well. I think it does help, Ron. I think you're right about that. Travis Turner says the Atlanta Falcons need to draft Rodrigo Blankenship. They do need a kicker, and obviously Hot Rod would be a pretty good one. Clay Dyke says, how long is it going to take us to get back to Atlanta? What, about 7 hours or so? We did drive about 7 hours. And so our plan is, and I know many of you are aware of this. In fact, last night on the Pella Window postgame show, that's about what half the comments were about. It's a huge day for UGA recruiting, right? So it's Darnell Washington going at halftime in the Under Armour game. It's Zachary Evans, or I guess he wants to be called Zach Evans, there in the fourth quarter. So we're going to be back in our DawgNation World Headquarters studios. We're at least going to try to be back for both those. And if not, we'll just pull over on the side of the road and do it from wherever we are. But we're going to be on video for those later this evening. So we got a big day coming. It does not end for us with the Sugar Bowl. It just kind of rolls right on through. So it's good vibes from the game last night. We're sort of sending those good vibes towards some possible good news for UGA recruiting. And there was definitely some talk about that amongst the folks who were here last night. Lots of eyes on Orlando, Florida today. And by the way, our buddy Connor Riley, good enough to provide coverage for the full length of the build-up to the Under Armour All-American game there in Orlando. Jeff Sintel now in San Antonio, where the All-American Bowl will go down on Saturday, where five-star cornerback Keely Ringo could also possibly give the Dogs a bit of a nod. So we are all over 3 different cities today, and I guess a 4th by the time you count us getting back to Atlanta. So a lot going on there. A couple more of your comments, then we will hear from Rodrigo Blankenship, and we'll do kind of an extended comment period at the end here today. And for those of you who listen radio podcasts, I know this is a little bit different kind of show than you're used to getting, so we always appreciate your patience with that when we're on the road here right now. A couple other things to get to here. By the way, Richard Pollard also mentioned Lewis Seen. What a night that Seen had. Would he have 6 tackles all the way around? He's got the look of one of these, I know this is sort of high cotton, but one of these J.R. Reed, Richard LeCounte types, these guys who've kind of locked down that safety position. I don't want to get ahead of myself and put too many, I guess, tough demands on Seen's future. But man, he's got the look of being one of those guys. He really does. He's got the look of being one of those guys that's going to he sort of slid in right last night in place of J.R. Reed, and you can easily see him just kind of sliding into the future there as well. And really, no matter what the safety situation for Georgia looks like next season, you could see Lewis Seen being a big part of that and doing some really good stuff. Don Williams on the subject of Matt Luke says a great hire. Love his energy. Yeah, I put this in the forum. I know there's some Twitter stuff last night about some video of Luke during the game. He's flying around and he's doing all that kind of stuff. That's an example of being a little bit different. We will hear from Matt Luke coming up in a couple of minutes, but that's an example of being a little bit different than Sam Pittman. Pittman was the yes sir guy with the recruits and things like that, but for the most part, certainly in practice, Matt Luke was a very laid back. Sam Pittman was a very laid back demeanor. This is not the kind of guy that's like, he's not running around like Todd Hartley. He's not he's not Kirby Smart during practice. He's not Dan Lanning during practice. Glenn Schumann. These are guys that are like, just foaming at the mouth for the full duration, or at least the part we get to see. Pittman was always more laid back guy than that. Based on the sideline stuff that I saw from Luke, and it could be he was just excited to be back on a football field again, and maybe happy to not have quite as much responsibility being offensive line coach.
Luke, first of all,
head coach. He could have just been enjoying that process. But it certainly seems like from last night's example that he's going to be a pretty energetic presence there as the offensive line coach. So a lot to like about Matt Luke, someone we'll hear from here coming up in just a moment. Before that, though, I did promise you Rodrigo Blankenship as part of DawgNation Daily presented by Merriweather and Tharp. This was good because Blankenship kind of goes into detail about some of the historic moments he's been able to be a part of. The game-winning kick against Notre Dame in 2017, the kick at the halftime of the Rose Bowl. These are pivotal moments in Georgia's history, and Blankenship's DNA is kind of mixed in with that really forever. And so it was cool to get a chance on that field last night to speak to him about that. Obviously, Rodrigo's time was pulled in a million different directions because he's one of the most popular players of the Kirby Smart era, and he played his final game last night. We were lucky enough to get some of that time from Blankenship. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Hot Rod from the field at the Superdome last night as part of DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. I saw your tweet this week about how fast the time goes by and the fact that your career at Georgia came to an end. What are the emotions like after doing so much in a Georgia uniform, knowing this is the last time you're going to wear it? What are those emotions like?
I mean, it's bittersweet. I've loved so much playing for the University of Georgia. I've loved every single moment. There's been some ups and downs, and there's been some adversity along the way. But adversity builds character, and I couldn't be more thankful for the opportunity that Coach Smart gave me when we had some coaching turnover. It's never the best situation, but I appreciate Coach Smart for giving me the opportunity and for giving me a scholarship, and for just trusting in me to go out and help our team in so many games. I can't put it in words right now because it still feels like we got another game to strap up and play next week. But I'm sure it's going to hit me real soon.
The kicks you make, Notre Dame, halftime of the Rose Bowl, those are like historic moments for Georgia. Are you a student of history? Do you appreciate the fact that, going to South Bend and getting that win, or, kicking a field goal that helped propel Georgia to a Rose Bowl win, that those are the kinds of things that are going to live forever? Are you the kind of person that takes some time to appreciate that, or does the season have to end or your career have to end for you to sort of spend time thinking about that?
I mean, I think I can definitely appreciate history. I'm definitely a student of the game and football just in general. I know that Georgia's 3-0 against Notre Dame, and so that's pretty great. Obviously we had our first ever appearance in the college football playoff and did some really special things there. And I'm hoping that this win tonight can just propel this program into the forward and next year, and hopefully make our second trip back. But I think it's going to take a couple days to kind of let everything set in and really get to kind of look back and reflect on my career.
I know you're kind of a modest guy, so I don't want to embarrass you, but, pregame warm-ups in Athens, when you guys are announcing starting lineups, ovation for you is huge each and every time. What was that like, and the connection that you developed with the students and the fans in general? How enjoyable was that for you to know that you really became such a fan favorite for so many people between the hedges every single Saturday?
I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, all I could ever hope to do is come out and do my job and execute for the team. And, DawgNation has been so incredible. All of our fans have been so incredible and so amazing and cheering us on and supporting us every step of the way. I'm always going to be appreciative and grateful for all the love and support that I've had over the years.
Hey, thanks for a great career, and thanks for spending some time with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. If you've been to games at Sanford Stadium, if you're in your seat before the game begins, when they're doing those Brooke Whitmire PA announcements of the starting lineups, and when Rodrigo Blankenship name is announced, it's not only the loudest cheer of any current player on the Georgia team, Jake Fromm included, it's as loud as anything I can remember. Blankenship was just incredibly popular, and it's really cool the humble way in which Blankenship responds to that popularity. He just kind of takes it all in stride, and he doesn't, at least the best that I can tell, I don't obviously know him well, but in the times I've had a chance to talk to him, last night included, he just kind of takes it all in stride and doesn't seem to be all that affected by it. He's just a cool guy all the way around. He's been a great kicker for Georgia, and it was fun to watch him put a close on his season last night, including a faked field goal. Now, it was Camarda that got a chance to run that, but Kirby Smart, who's had a little bit of propensity for calling fakes as of late. Called one last night and got that as Jake Camarda got the rush for 6 yards. I put this in the forum last night, so it seems appropriate to mention this here. Not that I'm bitter or salty or anything like that, but Camarda's run of 6 yards, do you realize back in November when Georgia played Florida, Gators only had 2 runs all game that were longer than Camarda's 6-yard run last night? Both of them went for 9 yards, so you can just something to follow away there. We'll do Gator Hater Updater a little later on in the program. We'll also hear from Matt Luke here coming up in a minute, too. Let me give you kind of a list of what's still to come here. A bunch of interviews. I had a chance to catch up with Trayvon Walker. We'll do that from the field here. Tyler Simmons, Azeez Ojulari, Monty Rice. I told you about the Lawrence Cager fun stuff where DeAndre Swift kind of sneaks in on us there along with James Coley and briefly interrupts that. So we've got a lot more interviews to come as part of this edition of DawgNation Daily, our final show from New Orleans before we make our way back to Georgia here today. Get ready to cover the Darnell Washington announcement tonight and 5-star running back Zach Evans as well. So a lot of good vibes could be flowing all the way around for Georgia when it comes to all of that. Let me do another round of comments here, and then we'll dive back in and get more interviews, including Matt Luke here in a minute. Tim Tatum talks about the Matt Landers touchdown. We all understand the significance of that. Landers has been such a lightning rod for criticism this year, but it is amazing, and I mean amazing, how popular Landers continues to remain with many of his Georgia teammates. In fact, I believe it's Monty Rice, who we'll hear from later on the show, when I was talking about George Pickens, because I spent a lot of time talking about George Pickens, and after a night like last night, who wouldn't be? Rice, on his kind of his own accord, kind of pivots the conversation over to Matt Landers and really made a point of praising Landers. That's coming up later on the show, and I think that's indicative of the way that a lot of Georgia players felt about Landers. They never stopped believing in him, even in the midst of what was at times a bit of a challenging season. And to see him get a touchdown last night, they were obviously very happy about that. T.O. Willingham says he's still going to be wearing those specs in honor of Rodrigo Blankenship. And, yeah, that image of those rec specs will be a big part of Blankenship's legacy at Georgia. And, you know, if that name, image, likeness stuff ever does fully come to pass and you can kind of sell, you know, souvenirs connected to your name, obviously that's an opportunity lost for Blankenship, because if he could have sold his own branded rec specs out and around Sanford Stadium, no doubt there would have been a lot of those in the stadium for sure. Jody Gilreath, we talked about Lewis Seen earlier. Jody saying that Seen's going to be an all-time great at UGA. I tell you, he's got the look of a really capable safety, and we know how important, you know, Kirby Smart views defensive back play in general, and one of the reasons why Georgia's recruited in those spots, cornerback and safety, so well is because of the hands-on approach that Smart brings to that, along with Charlton Warren, the position coach there, and it seems to have really impacted Seen here in his freshman season. There's no question about that. Brett Hunter also mentioning Tay Crowder, and there was kind of a cool moment saying that Tay Crowder had a great game, and there was a cool moment, I believe, where some of the players kind of carried Crowder off the field last night. It's another one of those guys, and Kirby spoke about this on New Year's Eve when he addressed the media for the final time ahead of the Sugar Bowl, that, you know, Crowder's a guy that came into Georgia as a wide receiver, kind of skinny, and over the course of time just tried a bunch of different positions, and on a defense filled with like 5-star names, Crowder's not really that kind of recruiting profile. But lo and behold, you just could not keep him off the field. You just couldn't. And last night was another example of that. You need guys like that in your program. And I think it really speaks to player development. That's one of the things I do believe that Smart and Glenn Schumann and these guys who work with the linebackers, and then they can tout that, you know, saying, hey, look what Tay Crowder became in this program. Look what he became in this system. Part of that's just a testament to who Tay Crowder is as a player, but also part of that is the fact that Georgia's going to give that opportunity for guys to grow and outdistance their recruiting profile. Crowder is an example of that and a real success story for UGA. I think that's right. Matthew Judice says, I was in Disney World and saw so here we got some possible inside information from our buddy Matthew Judice on Facebook. So y'all follow this for a second. Obviously, Under Armour All-American Games in Orlando, Matt says that he was at Disney World, saw Darnell Washington, and gave him a go dogs, and Darnell Washington gave him a grin. So do with that what you will in terms of Washington's potential announcement here later on tonight. But Matthew had a chance to catch up with him on that. John Benton says that Tyson Campbell didn't play as much as I thought he would. So I guess my thing with Campbell is, you know, even the SEC championship game, you know, he wasn't playing, you know, even seemingly full-time in that turf toe situation that he dealt with. It kept him out a lot after the Arkansas State game. I guess that just must still be lingering with him. I'm not a doctor, so I can't say that for sure, but we really haven't seen full game contribution from Campbell since the Arkansas State game. This has been a little bit of an injured season for Campbell, unfortunately. I know he's looking forward to an offseason to recover and rest up and be ready to go for 2020. And I know last night that the Baylor offensive game plan seemingly targeted DJ Daniel a good bit. I was a little surprised that I thought that Daniel kind of came into his own over the course of the second half of the year, kind of grew into that position. I still think he's got a really bright future as a defensive back for Georgia. Last night, maybe not the best night for Daniel in terms of maybe Baylor seeing some things they thought they could exploit and at times exploiting some of that kind of stuff. But if Stokes comes back, that's a pretty interesting rotation at cornerback, competition there amongst those guys of what we know Campbell can be when healthy, what Daniel proved that he could be. Obviously, Eric Stokes is the veteran presence. And then I'm thinking probably a lot more Tyreek Stevenson in this too. Stevenson's got the size and speed that just can't be coached, and he's a guy that got a lot more comfortable as the season progressed there as well. Brett Oglesby also mentioned the Campbell situation, so we'll find out about that. Molly Moy-Squire says that Matt Luke was awesome to watch on the sidelines. Loved the passion from him. It was a great thing to see. Luke, I think, is a terrific addition to Georgia. I think he deserves a lot of credit for how he was able to help gel this new-look Georgia offensive line, playing with two different tackles, even though Salyer and Mays are both experienced. They're really experienced at mostly different positions than that, working Warren Erickson in at right guard, and by all indications, Erickson had himself a really good night. I think that you give Erickson some credit for that, but you give Matt Luke some credit for that too. And when the game was over, as Georgia was getting handed the Sugar Bowl trophy, I had a chance to briefly catch up with Luke and about his excitement about being here at Georgia. It's good stuff from the new Georgia offensive line coach. Hope you enjoyed that live from New Orleans as a part of DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Coach Luke, first of all, welcome to the University of Georgia. Quite a way to get it started. We saw you on TV during the game. Pretty fired up and animated over there. How did it feel for your first time in red and black?
No, just excited about the opportunity. Have a chance to play. Two top 10 teams played in the Sugar Bowl. I appreciate these guys for the opportunity.
Certainly a new look offensive line for Georgia. You guys had to get ready to get up to speed pretty quick. What kind of challenge was that for you as a coach to get these guys ready in time?
Well, it's all about them. Those guys, they stepped up to the challenge. We had three normal starters out, and those guys stepped up. They took the challenge. They went wire to wire and played every snap. So really proud of those guys for stepping up.
How eager are you to get to work for the 2020 season now?
Yeah, that's what I was telling them. This is not the end. This is the beginning, and we can really build off this.
Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you. Go Dogs.
All right, good stuff there from Matt Luke. Kind of a quick one with him. We'll do another sort of quick one here coming up in just a moment with Trayvon Walker. I had a chance to sort of briefly catch up with, too. It was one of those things where we were just sort of running around the field and just kind of talking to who we get a chance to talk to, and whoever we bumped into, we sort of stuck a microphone in their face and let them speak for a little bit. And so it was fun to do that with Matt Luke. We'll do some more of that with Trayvon Walker. And then still to come, a little bit longer interviews with Tyler Simmons and Azeez Ojulari. Good stuff on the field with Lawrence Cager. A really in-depth conversation with Monty Rice. So got a lot coming up here, and we'll get to a lot of that here as a part of DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp, live from New Orleans here today. A little bit more time for some of your comments here, too, before we hear from Trayvon Walker. Bryce Adams, thank you for the kind words. Santiago Diarn, also appreciate your kind words there, too. We'll get some YouTube comments coming up, too. I haven't forgotten about that. You never know. We may even sneak over and take a Twitter comment or two here before we're done today as well. Phil Rogers on the subject of the guy that we just saw, Matt Luke, saying that dogs love Big Sam Pittman, but I like Coach Luke. We may have a diamond in the rough. And, yeah, Phil, I think that's probably very well said. I mean, obviously Pittman's work at Georgia speaks for itself, but the fact that Georgia was able to respond as quickly as it did to Pittman becoming an SEC head coach, no one's going to turn that job down. But Georgia acted quickly to find a replacement for Pittman. It's a name that we've all recognized, and it's a guy that seemingly has already put his stamp on Georgia very quickly. Yeah, so I think the Dogs' offensive line is going to be in pretty good hands with Matt Luke and guys like Broderick Jones. And to the extent there's still a decision to be made from Cedric Von Pron, it seems like he's pretty locked in with Georgia right now and kind of already knew Luke a little bit. But their offensive linemen paying close attention to this. People mentioned some of those 2021 names like Amarius Mims. You better believe that seeing Luke last night was the kind of thing that those guys may want to play for. I think that's very well likely to be true. Richard Pollard also saying the same thing. Joel Moody's, I'm really glad he brought this up. I should have mentioned this before now. Zamir White's game last night, I thought, was a very nice sign for him. It was, I think, 92 yards. I think he averaged somewhere in the neighborhood of like 5 yards a carry, something like that. That's a really nice performance. And here's what I believe. Y'all know how excited I am about Kendall Milton and how hopeful I am that Zach Evans chooses Georgia tonight. And obviously, much the same way I spent a whole year hyping up George Pickens, I'll probably spend a whole year hyping up Milton and Evans. I just probably will. But because experience matters, and this year for Georgia I think shows you when you have it, when you don't have it, that experience does matter. Because of that, I think at the start of the season, Zamir White is Georgia's most important running back. And at times this year, I have to admit, I just wasn't quite sure what Georgia had in White or in James Cook or really even Kenny McIntosh, because we weren't seeing him on the field as much. Those running backs beyond the two lead backs for Georgia this season, Swift and Brian Harrion, beyond that, I just wasn't quite so sure what Georgia had. And I thought it was important last night for Zamir to show himself and show everybody that he can be kind of the lead cog in a running back game. Now, it's going to be a stiff competition amongst the 5 backs that we kind of expect to be here in Athens next season. That's a pretty stiff competition. But White's experience, I think, will really matter there in that regard. And I think he showed you last night that, yeah, this can be the lead guy in an SEC running back group. And, you know, a lot of what White did last night was not necessarily of the spectacular variety, but it was very workmanlike, and it was tough. It was hard yards. It was intense. And that's kind of what we've thought we would get a lot from Zamir White. So seeing that last night from Zeus in the Sugar Bowl, I think that really was a very nice thing to see, and I'm glad to see that come up in our comment section. Another quick short interview for us. How about Trayvon Walker? And one of the fun things you'll see about Walker in this video is just the size that he brings to the table. You know, I'm 6'2". I'm, after a week's worth of New Orleans food, well north of 200 pounds. And, you know, Walker just dwarfs me. I mean, just dwarfs me. But an athlete at that size, this is a guy who's got an amazingly bright future in a Georgia uniform. And as he showed you a lot at the end of the 2019 season, that future for him is really now. And in no uncertain terms, Walker says during this interview that he hopes that what happened last night on that field in New Orleans is the springboard for Georgia for a national championship in 2020. So good stuff here from Trayvon Walker as DawgNation Daily presented by Merriweather and Tharp rolls on from New Orleans. Feel to be a Sugar Bowl champion in your first year at UGA, capping off your freshman season. How does that feel?
Feel good. You know, it's just better things to come, brighter future. We got a bright future ahead of us. We got a great team coming back. I know some players leaving, but we got some players that go out and compete every night.
So many young guys on defense getting it done for you today. How do you use what happened today as momentum for 2020?
Just continue to go hard, continue to believe in what our main goal, which is the national championship. Next year, we're coming for it.
Another one of those freshmen on the other side of the ball, George Pickens, has a huge game today. What did it feel like to watch him going out there and doing what he did, especially in the first half?
You know, it was good, but knowing George, we all know he could do that. We all know it was in him from the beginning, so it was just a plus for him.
Well, congratulations, a great season.
Thank you.
All right, I enjoyed that chance to speak to Trayvon Walker, and very interesting to hear him talk about a national championship, especially just given the fact that if Georgia wins one in 2020, or really sometime over the next couple of years, Trayvon Walker is likely to be a big part of all of that. Fun string of interviews we're able to show for you here today and play for you as part of our program. Huge thanks to BJ Swinney, who's kind of our on-site producer here in New Orleans, and big thanks back to Michael Carval in our DawgNation World Headquarters studios in Atlanta, where we'll be back later on today. Michael worked late last night to help make sure we were able to show all of these for you here today on radio, podcast, video, and everything else. So big thanks and all that. We got a lot more to come. In fact, I want to transition now and kind of give you some of the stuff that we got in the Georgia locker room last night, including from wide receiver Tyler Simmons here. You know, Simmons is another guy, much like Matt Landers, who, let's face it, faced his share of criticism here this year. But for Simmons, I think to get a chance to hear from him at the end of his Georgia career, I think this is going to be incredibly poignant because he talks about the relationships that he built with Georgia players. And he's proud of what the Georgia offense was able to do last night, proud in particular of George Pickens. He speaks about that. I think hearing Simmons here, I think, is a really good window and a nice piece of insight into what motivated Georgia all the way around for this game. A lot of Georgia players wanted to play for Tyler Simmons. Tyler Simmons wanted to play his heart out one final time in a Georgia uniform. And all that together, these guys collectively lifting each other up, turned into a pretty good level of energy for the Dogs last night. Simmons, as a senior, was right in the middle of all of that. We talked to him about what it feels like after all this time to see and feel a Georgia career come to an end. It's Tyler Simmons here. It's DawgNation Daily presented by Merriweather and Tharp. A lot more to come, including the Georgia wide receiver right now. So we're here with Georgia wide receiver Tyler Simmons, and it seems like this time goes by so fast, right? I mean, I remember 4 years ago, you're a senior in high school, watching you play there, and now your Georgia career's come to an end. What are your memories of it? How will you look back on your Georgia career? And when you think about it, what will you think about?
I mean, the first thing that come to mind is I gained over 100 brothers. Not just teammates, I gained over 100 brothers. And this whole process, they helped me get through it. I helped them get through it. And that's really what I remember about this, just the bond that I built with this team and the past teams before and just the relationships.
How special is it to go out with a win like this tonight?
It's definitely special. I mean, the emphasis this week and the past couple weeks coming into the bowl game where if you're not doing this for anybody, for the younger guys, do it for the seniors at least. Send us out in the right way, and that's what they did. They played lights out today, and they played great.
I know there's so much dissection that goes on during the season about what's going on with the offense. You're a part of those, inner workings. You're a part of that. For the media, for the fans, what is it that we maybe don't see going on behind the scenes? And when you guys are working to score more points and perform better offensively, what is it that being a part of that process allows you to understand that maybe those of us outside that process maybe don't understand as well as we could?
It's a lot of hard work put into it. I mean, it's a lot of hard work that's not seen. The summers, the hot summers we put in, the cold winters we put in, they finna go right back into winter workouts. Luckily, I don't have to be there. But really the work that these boys put in, the effort and the time, like being a student athlete is not easy at all. So I just appreciate these boys and what they did for this team and what they did for me this year.
How proud are you of what you saw from George Pickens tonight? Obviously a huge performance from him. What did that mean to you?
I mean, it means a lot. I mean, I see it every day at practice. I know the boy could play. So just to see him put it on the field today and win MVP, it means a lot just for the receiver core too.
For guys like Deandre Swift and Jake Fromm facing NFL decisions, as an older guy, what's your advice to them, and how much have you guys kind of talked about that behind the scenes?
Well, my advice would be that's kind of hard giving that advice to. I mean, if the money's there, I don't blame you. So if the money's there, I don't blame you to take it. Roquan, he had the opportunity to go do what he do, and he's making a lot of money doing it. So, I mean, the great thing about Georgia is you can always come back to get your degree. So if the money's there, go ahead and do it.
All right, really fun to get a chance to talk to Georgia wide receiver Tyler Simmons last night, one of those seniors the Georgia players were so eager to want to go out and play for, and really take him out a winner and give those guys one final very happy memory in a Georgia uniform, and no doubt that came to pass last night. That was a great thing to be able to see, and obviously a lot of celebration from the Georgia players after night like last night. And as we start 2020, a chance for you to celebrate as well, and there's no bolder celebration than on a Royal Caribbean cruise. Royal Caribbean really rolling out some big things for 2020. We want to make sure you're aware of that. Normally in our program, we go cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Here today, the day after the Sugar Bowl, we'll keep this one all on UGA for today. But I'll remind you, though, that our Royal Caribbean's a great choice here in 2020 as they turn 50 years bold this year. A chance for you to experience a lot of things that makes a Royal Caribbean cruise so great. They set the standard really when it comes to dazzling full-scale productions on every cruise. I'm talking about an unbelievable entertainment, Tony Award-winning, awe-inspiring Broadway musicals. You've heard us talk about some of these kind of things before. Also, ice skating, dive show. They got the Aqua Theater shows on the Oasis class ships. Just an amazing, amazing entertainment thing. And also fun like nightclub-type hotspot stuff like the Casino Royale, the Boleros, the Playmakers Sports Bar, which I love, the Schooner Bar, all kinds of just really, really fun stuff. It's one of the things that makes Royal Caribbean cruises so much fun to be a part of. So you go to RoyalCaribbean.com and find out more about that. But also, you can reach out to your travel professional as well to go ahead and book that cruise. I know you need a vacation. Listen, right now, I feel like I definitely could use one. So I know you probably feel much the same way. Or we can recommend you reach out to the Cruise and Vacation Authority. The number to do so is 800-326-4971. That's 800-326-4971. Do me a favor. Tell them you heard about them here on DawgNation Daily and get ready to enjoy a Royal Caribbean cruise here in 2020. Of course, for now, we're enjoying our time, a little bit more time for us in New Orleans before we make our way back. New Orleans is one of those places where you're really glad to get here, but also typically pretty glad to leave as well. So I think that we kind of feel that same way. It was 3 a.m. last night, and I was eating jambalaya and, shrimp and grits and all that kind of stuff. So I've probably gained 15 pounds since we've been here, and I've experienced all that New Orleans has to offer, to say the least. But I'm looking forward to kind of getting back to a normal and getting back to reality here coming up in just a little bit. Before we do that, though, a lot more fun interviews to bring you on this special edition of DawgNation Daily presented by Meriwether and Tharp from downtown New Orleans for a final time for us, including also from the Georgia locker room last night, my conversation with Azeez Ojulari. You know, it was seemingly 12 years ago where we were talking all the time about havoc rate, and that became less of a talking point for Georgia during the season. But last night, havoc was seemingly back. Georgia gets a couple interceptions. Georgia gets a couple of sacks, a couple tackles for loss, kind of coming into play. And one of the guys who, much like all season long, at the center of all of that was Azeez Ojulari. And so Ojulari also, I think, last night was reflecting on the fact that it was really in this same spot exactly a year ago for him that he kind of broke out and kind of gave you an indication of what the future could look like for him. He played very well in a big opportunity last year in the Sugar Bowl. And, Smart talked a lot about this during the spring and the summer, that it was Ojulari who used that moment to become the player that he became here for the 2019 season. So I asked him, how do you kind of help instill that same spirit into some of the other Georgia players? Maybe it's a Lewis Seen, for instance, who are looking to do the same thing with that opportunity for the 2020 season. And Ojulari, pretty thoughtful guy, had a lot to say about that. So it's Azeez Ojulari here from New Orleans, DawgNation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp. Hope you enjoy it. Last year the Sugar Bowl was a huge springboard for you.
Yes, sir.
What would you tell guys who maybe want to do in 2020 what you did in 2019,
yes, sir,
using this game as a catalyst for that? What would your advice be to them when it comes to that?
I'll say definitely just stay focused, stay locked in, and just keep your head down, keep grinding, listen to the coaches, and just play your ball, man. Just go all out, listen to the coaches, just do whatever they want you to do, and just execute. And
a huge talking point before the start of the season was the havoc rate and those havoc plays. You guys had a number of those tonight. You were in on some of those there as well. What did that feel like defensively to be kind of able to go out and put a punctuation mark on the season?
Yes, sir. Man, it felt great, definitely, because we worked on it all bowl practice, just making sure we reached that goal and just coming out here, just out hustle and out hit, compete, and then the havoc plays will come.
We had a chance to talk to Trayvon Walker a little earlier. He said emphatically that he wants to use this game as a big step forward for 2020.
Right.
How does the team do that? How do you guys rally around a strong finish this season and, have, I guess, more accomplishments in 2020? What's the process of doing that like?
Good momentum. We'll definitely finish this season off. It's going to push us into next season with the momentum with this W. So it's just coming in, doing what the coaches want us to do, executing as we go into this offseason, see things that we got to work on, fix, so we could be stronger next season for sure.
There's been a lot of talk before the game about who wasn't here.
Right.
What was the team's response to hearing some of that kind of stuff and I guess the questions and the doubt? What was the players' response to all that?
It was really like the next man up, really. Just come in here, just do what the coaches want you to do, next man up. You're ready. We prepared all those 15 practices we had. We prepared very perfect, just very good and hard. So it's just like, your time is here. Come on, come ball, man. It's no problem.
All right, fun conversation there with Azeez Ojulari. Still more to come for us here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp today. We'll hear from Monty Rice in the Georgia locker room. Rice was very, very interesting with the words that he said, and we'll be back on the field again from last night's game. Lawrence Cager talks about what he'd seen from George Pickens, and also a fun, for those of you watching on video, you'll kind of get the best of this, fun interruption from Deandre Swift and Georgia offensive coordinator James Coley. There's a lot of happy celebrating going on the field last night after the Sugar Bowl, so that was a really fun thing to be able to see. We'll also have kind of a version of your comments coming up as well. I know I've taken some Facebook comments already. We'll do some Facebook and some YouTube and some things like that, give you one final chance to react on the Sugar Bowl before we get ready to make our way back to Georgia. And don't forget tonight, DawgNation video coverage of the announcement from five-star tight end Darnell Washington, five-star running back Zach Evans, all leading towards Saturday, and the announcement from five-star cornerback Keely Ringo. Jeff Sentell continues to be in San Antonio. He was in Orlando earlier, in San Antonio now, getting ready for the All-American Bowl coming up on Saturday, so he'll have coverage of the announcements from there. Our buddy Connor Riley still in Orlando. He'll have some coverage of that. So DawgNation covering all the bases here. New Orleans, Orlando, San Antonio, pretty large presence for us wherever Georgia football news is happening, we're hopeful to be able to cover it for you. And incredibly grateful that 2020 starts with you doing what we've done together for such a long time now. You allowing us to narrate the experience of being a UGA fan, that's certainly something we do not take for granted. We are incredibly appreciative of that. More from the locker room last night, Monty Rice. And I think it's really kind of fascinating how much Rice has emerged as a real leader for Georgia with his play on the field, with his ability to speak after games. This is a guy who's become quite an impressive presence all the way around, and last night was an example of that. As I mentioned before, kind of volunteering his feelings about Matt Landers, the touchdown he's able to score last night. Very candid about what the defense wanted to do after, frankly, not having its best game in its last outing against LSU. He talked a lot about that and a whole lot more. So I think it's been a really fun collection of interviews from last night's Sugar Bowl win for Georgia. I think Monty Rice is a big part of that. So I hope you enjoyed a chance to hear from the Georgia linebacker right now. What's it like being in New Orleans? Sugar Bowl obviously has a lot of history for the SEC, for Georgia in particular. What's it like to be back here playing in this game? What does the Sugar Bowl mean to you personally?
I grew up watching this game, so, it's crazy sometimes that I'm playing in it. Last year I didn't really get to play because my foot was, coming off that little injury I had. So, it's special to me, we put in a lot of work, to get here, We weren't here by accident. It's just special.
It's a great defense all season, but as you mentioned a moment ago, the SEC championship wasn't kind of what you wanted it to be. How important was it tonight to come out and send a message that, this is a stout defense and it shouldn't be judged on the results of the SEC championship game alone?
Yeah, we know what we do throughout the week. Like I say, I don't really listen to what people got to say because at the end of the day, they're not the one going out there practicing. They're not the one with 2 casts on their hand with injuries, sprained wrist. It's not, they're not out there banging with us. They just talking. So, they can talk all they want. That LSU team is, a great team. They're on the road. Joe Burrow and them, they hot. They just put up almost 100 on Oklahoma. They just, this is their year. So, nothing we can do about that game now. Our focus is on this game and, coming here and getting a W for these seniors and, for these coaches that, we put in a lot of work over the offseason. During practice, fall camp, spring practice, summer conditioning, or winter workouts, summer workouts. So, this is the result.
Regardless of what your future holds, does it make it easier for Georgia to do that work for the 2020 season, knowing that it got a win tonight against Baylor? Does that help the momentum of the offseason?
Yeah, we started last year. I got the chills for a second. We started off 2019 last year on the wrong foot. And going into 2020, my birthday's in 6 days now, so, this was, a good start to 2020, I'm happy for these seniors, for Tyler Simmons. And, yes, he was on sides. And, I'm just proud for these guys, man. They put in a lot of work. And Hot Rod, Tay, Mike B, JR, even Brian, Tyler, even for the ones that are not here.
What did you make of George Pickens' performance tonight, and what's it like watching that as a defensive player on the sideline, getting a lift from an offensive guy like that?
That George Pickens, man, he's different. Different breed, rare breed. He ball. He do his thing. He did his thing tonight, and I'm proud of him. I just want him to keep getting better, keep doing what he do. But, also shout out to my dog, Matt Landers, that was his first career touchdown catch. And Matt needed that, for his confidence. I'm proud of him. Because don't nobody work harder than Matt. Matt works his tail off all the time. And, finally for him to get one like that, that's special, and I'm proud of him. I know he's happy inside. Man, y'all gonna see a Matt Landers soon that y'all haven't seen. We've seen Matt catch screens in practice, take it 90 yards for a touchdown. And, y'all don't get to see that, but his time is coming, and that was a good start to the year for him.
All right, we'll have more and more interview to come before we're done on this edition of DawgNation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp in New Orleans. It'll be Lawrence Cager from the field last night. Cager, very complimentary of the night that George Pickens had. Also some funny stuff from him with Deandre Swift and James Coley here coming up, too. I do want to get a few of our YouTube comments. I had some Facebook comments earlier. I want to get a few comments on YouTube there as well. Devin Glenn says that he's happy for Landers. Yeah, I think a lot of people are. I think that, listen, we all know the challenge that comes with trying to play a high-profile SEC program. It's great when things are going well. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to deal with if you're not playing well in that situation, and Landers has had to take a lot of that head-on this year. I think that's one of the reasons why so many Georgia players were so happy for him last night, Devin. I think you're right about that. Cliff Payne says all great quarterbacks need great wide receivers who'll catch the football. And, last night George Pickens, I think, showed you for 2020 and beyond that he's going to be one of those guys for Georgia, a real, true go-to receiver. It's what Terrence Edwards told us about Pickens before he played his first game at Georgia, that Terrence really believed, and obviously Terrence knows the receiver position as well as anyone could, that Terrence really believed that Pickens was going to be one of those guys. In fact, last night Terrence had a really funny tweet. We need to get Terrence back on DawgNation Daily again. It's been a little bit since he's been on. He said, obviously I'm assuming paying deference to A.J. Green, he says that Terrence said that he's about to only be the third best receiver in Georgia history because George Pickens is about to overtake him. It was a very funny tweet from Terrence. I really enjoyed that. So obviously high expectations for Pickens going into 2020. Green Soldier checking in on YouTube saying the level of adversity this team has overcome is incredible. Great job, Dogs. And Green, I think that's exactly right. Matthew McGay, he says, I feel like two more great receivers would have made the season even better. And, yeah, that's what you're hopeful for 2020, Matthew, is the fact that whether it be, one of the guys who's still here getting a little bit more seasoned and really somewhat under the radar because he finishes with an injury and because maybe slightly overshadowed by George Pickens. But if you look at the overall numbers for Dominic Blaylock as a freshman, Georgia got good use out of him too. So Georgia, who did not do as much as it could with its receivers, just generally speaking this year, did not necessarily leave its two top freshman receivers wanting for much. They were able to get both those guys involved pretty well. And now when you think about maybe doing that again with a Rosemead or a Justin Robinson or an Arian Smith or Jermaine Burton, last but not least on that list for sure, getting one of those guys involved, I think that gives you some real hope for 2020, which is really the only thing you can ask for going into an off season. Is there legitimate hope for things to be better? And based on what you saw last night, coupled to what Georgia has coming in with its 2020 class, I think legitimate, real live hope certainly does exist for a better offensive performance next season. Jalen Jackson says Lewis Cine is special, and I think he has a chance to be that kind of player, Jalen. I think you are right about that. I think that you are right about that. Jordy Lawson says, very excited about the future of this program. 2020 could be the year, and yeah, it could be. Hunter Beard says it's just 249 days now until Georgia plays Virginia to open up the 2020 season. Kind of a nice thing to think about there as well. Ryan Jackson also says he thinks the future is bright and a national championship could be coming soon, and you never know. That could be on the way. We'll have kind of an R.S. Andrews here in a moment. A lot more of your comments on both Facebook and YouTube to kind of wrap up our time in New Orleans and head towards a recruiting night tonight. There is one more interview I want to give you a chance to hear. It is on the subject of receivers, and it's on the subject of, let's face it, was kind of touchy coming into this week, of who's here, who's not here. Lawrence Cager was an injured player who wanted to be with his team and wanted to experience this moment with them, his final time being around UGA, even though he has already worn a Georgia uniform for the last time because of the injury that he's dealt with. But he kind of talks about the behind-the-scenes deliberation that would cause a player not to want to play in a bowl game like this or be a part of the team in a bowl game like this. And he has a lot of very kind words to say for George Pickens. So this is fun stuff from Georgia receiver Lawrence Cager, a real leader on this team and a guy that I think's presence is going to be sorely missed. Obviously, Georgia may still look to find a veteran presence here and there to kind of round out its receiving core. But in terms of matching the contribution that Cager's brought to Georgia this year, that will not be easily done. So a fun way to finish off at least the interview portion of our program here today, a chance to talk to Lawrence Cager on the field from last night. Hope you enjoyed. Wide receiver Lawrence Cager, obviously you didn't get a chance to be on the field with your team tonight, but I saw you tweet during the game that you've been trying to tell people about George Pickens for a while. I know you've worked with him a lot this year. How proud were you tonight to see him go out there in front of this national audience and show what he's all about?
Oh man, it was like a great moment, man. Him and Jake just had the connection tonight. 12 catches, 175. You can't beat that. He beat my own thing. So I'm a little mad about him upset with that. No, but it's good. He's a great player. He's going to be a great player for, many more, however long he stays.
How much fun was it for you to be a part of this? I know you don't get a chance to play in the game, but you've made a brotherhood with this team here, and you get a chance to be in New Orleans with them. How much fun was that for you?
Yeah, I made a brotherhood for life here, man. every part of this team is my brothers. And I just can't thank them enough. And to go out with a win is remarkable.
Now, different players have made different decisions for various reasons. What does the average fan or the average media member kind of not know about what goes on behind the scenes, about why someone does come to New Orleans, why someone doesn't go? What do we maybe don't understand about that?
It's all.
Man, Sugar Bowl text. Sugar Bowl text. No comment. Shout out to
Man, it's all a brotherhood, you know. Some guys got to make business decisions, you know. Some things are bigger than us, and we'll never talk down or think down to anybody or one of our teammates. We respect the decision 100%. We back them every way like they their brother, and we look forward to how they, you know, compete into the next level, go into the NFL.
It was a pleasure to watch you play. Best of luck in the future.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Go Dogs.
Yeah, it's so fun to get a chance to talk to Lawrence Cager in the field last night as he's getting his Sugar Bowl champions T-shirt, and I know some of the comments in the comment section mentioning the fact that they wish that Kenesha Clark saying wish Cager had another year to play. It is so true. It's like a guy like that, you come in. Frankly, I didn't really know a lot about Lawrence Cager when he played in Miami, and when he showed up at Georgia, I'm like, wow, this guy's pretty good. You'd like to be watching him for a little longer, and I know he said before that he wished he could have been in Georgia a little longer. So for the moment in which Cager was here, he certainly provided a fine contribution to UGA, and he can hold his head high with the way that he performed and how he equated himself while wearing the red and black. Certainly a guy who's proven to be a DGD in every sense of the word, and a guy that Georgia fans no doubt are going to miss. All right, why don't we do this? We're going to wrap up here in New Orleans in a moment. Let me kind of roll into our R.S. Andrews cool down here, and we'll make this part of our podcast today. I'll take a few comments on Facebook and YouTube. We'll get ready to get off the air after that because we've got to get ready to make our way back to Georgia. But I do want to give you both on Facebook and YouTube a chance to kind of sound off and be a part of this, and I'll remind you, I know it's been kind of cold in Georgia. That means you want that heating system to work the way that it should. R.S. Andrews makes that possible with their $99 Mega Furnace Safety Check. Not only is it going to keep your family warm, but it's also going to keep you safe because, let's face it, these heating systems can be an issue. So let R.S. Andrews give you the peace of mind that you need, that $99 Mega Furnace Safety Check. You can find them online at rsandrews.com. All right, a couple comments, and we'll get ready to go after that on what has been a very busy time for us here in New Orleans. Antoine Middleton on the subject comparing George Pickens to Julio Jones. And obviously one of the things that Pickens does really well is use his size to his advantage and both body control. One of the things that amazes me about Pickens, I've always felt like he kind of plays the game almost like a basketball player, and that he's always seemingly looking to post guys up and sort of use his size as a leverage opportunity. He's not the fastest receiver. No one would pretend that he is. But in terms of how he uses his physicality to kind of get it done, certainly you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who's going to be more successful at doing that than he is going to be. And when you kind of pair that with a guy like Arian Smith, for instance, who brings the other dimension, how much more difficult does it get to guard George Pickens when you've got a real speedster like Smith who you've got to be very aware of? And obviously they've kind of promised Arian something of a McCole Hardman-type role, McCole Hardman speed to be sure. How much more difficult does that make Georgia to guard, knowing you add that speed into the mix to go along with just the overall raw physicality of a guy like Pickens? Fun to think about there. Brooke Ann Childer says, when do you think we'll know if Fromm LeCount are returning? So the only person who gave kind of any specificity at all last night, at least in terms of the guys I got a chance to talk to, was Deandre Swift, who said in a couple of days that he's going to kind of figure all of this out. I'm going to presume that LeCount and Fromm are at least operating on a similar timeline. So we're still, I would say, at least a couple of days out on that based on what Swift said. We don't know for sure if Fromm and LeCount are following the same kind of path on that, but it stands to reason they probably would. You know, LeCount last night was at least honest enough to say that, as opposed to saying I haven't really thought about it, he was more along the lines of I don't want to talk about it because I'm here at the Sugar Bowl, and I respect that. Listen, I've got a job to do. I've got to ask the question, but if he says, hey, I'm just enjoying this for right now, I think he's got every right to be able to say that. And so that was kind of the story on that last night. So we didn't get a lot of light shed on that, with the exception of Swift, who did kind of put the timeline on next couple of days from him. So maybe, you know, listen, there's two different thought trains here. On the one hand, Georgia fans hope, at least in some cases, in LeCount's case, maybe the most likely, Fromm too, that these guys return to Georgia for their senior season. But there's also the parallel thought to that of hope we get a chance to find out sooner rather than later what the future holds for these guys. And so that's kind of the best I can answer that for right now. Enrique is Isidro. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Enrique. On the subject of Brock Vandagriff, yeah, on a typical week, Vandagriff decommitting from Oklahoma would be probably a bigger story around here. It kind of gets buried in the midst of the 2020 announcements that are about to happen and the Sugar Bowl that just took place. But, yeah, Brock Vandagriff from the Athens area, a former Oklahoma commit, opened his recruitment back up, and presumably, along with guys like Caleb Williams, Georgia could be involved in the Brock Vandagriff situation here. I would certainly expect that to be the case. Pretty interesting thing to bring up there. Byron Dean Butler says, we are better off than we were a year ago. That's progress any way you look at it. Next season, the defense is going to be nasty. Offense will be a welcome surprise. So, yeah, Byron, you could be right. Georgia may be heading towards a better off-season's worth of preparation than it was a season ago. Could very well be the case. Jermaine Jones says that, comparing Pickens to A.J. Green, saying that he's a little bit more like an Anquan Boldin or an Alshon Jeffrey. And those may be pretty good comparisons all the way around. I mean, as far as the crispness of the route tree from Pickens, yeah, I'll leave that for other people to dissect. All I know is when the football is in the air and there's a chance to go get it, Pickens is very good at going and getting that thing, which I think you really appreciate if you're watching the Dogs play there. A couple more YouTube comments. Let's see what else is going on here on the YouTube side of things here for a moment. Jason Hester says that Jake Fromm and Brock Vandagriff have no relationship to each other. Fromm will be gone before Vandagriff ever gets on campus. That's true. If Fromm were to stay for senior season, Vandagriff will be coming the year after that. Carson Beck is Georgia's 2020 signee for the moment, and we don't yet know what the situation holds for Georgia when it comes to 2021 quarterbacks. Is it a guy like Caleb Williams, who's been obviously linked to Georgia, but linked to a number of other schools as well? Is a guy like Vandagriff, just given the fact that he's from the Athens area, the connection between he and Georgia is going to be talked about just because of the geography of it all. So there's still a good bit of ground to be covered when it comes to what Georgia's priority is for the 2021 recruiting class. One way or another, Georgia will need an elite quarterback for that class. It's just a matter of, is it a Williams, is it a Vandagriff, is it whoever else? Crow King 123 also talking up the big game from George Pickens, and I thought it was a nice one to be able to see for sure. I thought it was a very nice game to be able to enjoy, and a really fun cap on the 2019 season all the way around. A couple more Facebook comments, and we'll get ready to roll out of here today, and appreciate all of you being with us. And I know many of you are tuning in today quite bleary-eyed. I feel very much the same way. I'm pretty tired myself, but it's a fun kind of tired because it was a fun night last night for UGA. A couple more Facebook comments. Richard Sheffield says, think of all the big games this team's played over the last 3 years. Special time to be a dog. I think that's exactly right. I think that's very well said. Felton Johnson says, how about the dime that Fromm dropped on Pickens in stride? Can't throw it any better than that. Yeah, Felton, you're right about that. It was a very, very nice throw. Shabazz Ali comparing your Pickens to Randy Moss. And sometimes it does seem like Pickens goes up and what mosses those guys. He's good at high pointing that football. He's big and he's strong, and he uses that to his advantage. Ken Feinberg says he thought Georgia was slighted a bit on the All-SEC team. I know there were some other folks who were feeling kind of that same way. A couple more comments. AC Slater also makes this kind of an interesting comparison. Remember Michael Crabtree, former Texas Tech receiver who played for a while for the San Francisco 49ers? Pretty interesting comparison. And Crabtree is also a top 10 pick, so I'm sure George Pickens won't mind that comparison whatsoever. I'm sure he won't mind that at all. Cassie Coleman says it was a great game to be at. I'm proud of our dogs. Cassie, I'm proud of you for getting a chance to be there and enjoy that, and I hope you had a great time. And I'm sure you're like many of us on your way back to Georgia or wherever it is that you live, hopefully looking to get some rest here at some point in time. Many of you kind of making your way through work today, kind of doing the same thing. So we're glad that you've let us be a little bit of a part of that with you. We'll get ready to sign off for now and tell you that, well, listen, we love to finish all of our shows this way. Gator Hater Updater, Georgia celebrating a Sugar Bowl win, also celebrating a nice streak of wins against rivals, including those lousy, stinking Gators. It has now been 1,160 days since Florida's beaten Georgia. What a great way to start the new year with the Gator Hater Updater rolling right on, adding that total each and every day. This will be the final time I speak to you from New Orleans, back in Georgia tonight for some big-time recruiting announcements. So for everybody who helped make Sugar Bowl coverage possible, B.J. Swinney on the scene here in New Orleans, our buddy Michael Carvel back in our DawgNation World Headquarters studios in Atlanta. Thanks for allowing us to be a part of that with you and the 2019 season all the way around. And the great news is, as the calendar turns to 2020, even bigger and better things on the horizon for DawgNation, and we think for UGA and its fans too. So we'll look forward to being a part of those conversations with you again here as we head through 2020 as well. So Happy New Year to all of you. Hope you enjoyed the Sugar Bowl last night. We appreciate you being here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp today. I'll talk to you very soon back in Georgia.